Hey everyone, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton here. So much happening. First up, though, the insurrection by the left again. This past week, Los Angeles has been under siege due to rioting, really a leftist insurrection, using the excuse of federal law enforcement enforcing federal immigration law against the Biden invaders and other unlawfully present aliens, meaning illegal aliens. And the left, allied Democratic politicians, have been trying to maximize Trump's mass deportation effort politically by attacking law enforcement, attacking the rule of law, defending invaders, defending criminality, and frankly, encouraging violence and rioting. And so the president, in response, you can see the video, you've seen the videos of what's been going on in Los Angeles. Foreign flags. It's clear there have been a large number of actual non-citizens engaged in the violence against federal and local law enforcement. I mean, truly outrageous conduct and pretty dangerous stuff as well. And what happens when the president wants to take action and defend the rule of law, defend federal property, federal lives, the lives of LA citizens? He gets attacked by the left. And the left encourages violence and yet then blames Trump and law enforcement for the violence by their allies. And here you have the lead insurrectionist in many ways, Mayor Bass from Los Angeles, try to shift blame from her own incitement to President Trump.
A week ago, everything was peaceful in the city of Los Angeles and in all of the representatives behind me in their cities as well. Things began to be difficult on Friday when raids took place. And it's important that I begin there because that is the cause of the problems that have happened in the city of Los Angeles and other cities. This was this was provoked by the White House. The reason why, we don't know.
I mean, incredible. The federal government enforces the rule of law on immigration, removes foreign nationals, many of whom who were targeted were dangerous foreign nationals. And this darn politician who refused to, by accounts, provide necessary protection against the resulting violence egged on by her political allies, dares blame ICE, dares blame President Trump. You know, under the January 6th precedent, incitement's a federal crime. Remember? They tried to put Trump in jail over that. Is Bass going to be investigated for it? I hope so. And this is what happened once she started inciting riots. Let's go to this video of the highway, the major highway in Los Angeles that was shut down, people's lives disrupted, people's lives put in jeopardy. Major transport hub or transportation network in Los Angeles shut down by their rioters. And look at what the police had to contend with there. And they had to show up and fire tear gas and such to clear the highway. And of course, Trump, per usual, is on point, understands issues, and can explain them in a very easy way, in a way that's easy to understand. And you know, he pointed it out smartly, and because he has a memory, right? You know, the left prides itself on being an enemy of memory and history because they don't want you to remember anything that they've done before. But Trump is too smart for them. Let's go to Trump explaining the context here, number 14.
You have to remember, I've been here before, and I went right by every rule. And I waited for governors to say, send in the National Guard. They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it. And they just wouldn't do it. It kept going on and on, got worse and worse. And in Minneapolis, that city was burning down 7 days. And I said, I don't care. The governor, who's a governor that just happened to be running for vice president, a total, you talk about an incompetent governor. He's an incompetent person. That he was picked. Well, I was actually very happy he was picked for other reasons. But this guy wouldn't call the National Guard. And we ultimately just sent in the National Guard. We stopped it. But that was after 7 days. And I said to myself, if that stuff happens again, we've got to make faster decisions because they don't want to do it. The radical left, it's usually radical left, and it's usually governors that are Democrat, and they don't want to call them in. They don't want to save lives. They don't want to save property. They don't want to call them in. I don't know what it is. We sent them in, not early, we sent them in late as far as I'm concerned. But big problems, as you know, 3 nights ago, big problems were ensuing. If we didn't send in the National Guard quickly, right now, Los Angeles would be burning to the ground.
Yeah, and of course, for his troubles in defending the rule of law, he got sued in federal court by the radical leftist governor, Gavin Newsom. Of course, they got a left-wing judge, a Clinton appointee, actually the brother of former Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer, to essentially, I would argue, these are one of these few decisions, there's no doubt, it was literally a judicial coup. Said the president didn't have a right to deploy the National Guard under federal law and as commander-in-chief. Just like an incredible assertion and usurpation of presidential power. And thankfully, a Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals panel said that's ridiculous. Your ruling is stayed and shut it down almost immediately. You know, and I got to tell you, Congress has got to get its act together with this impeachment analysis or approach to policing the courts. They don't even want to have a hearing on it. Will we have a judge telling the President of the United States he can't deploy the National Guard to defend federal law enforcement and federal property? He can't send the Marines in to defend the rule of law, as federal law specifically allows for? I mean, look at Newsom's response. You've got Tom Homan threatening rightly to arrest or to push for the arrest. Homan can't do it directly. I'm sure he wish he could. Of Homan and people of Newsom and people like Bass who may be engaged in criminal activity with respect to obstructing ICE enforcement and encouraging and inciting violence. And here's Newsom's ridiculous response.
California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next.
Yeah, let's go to the clip where he's number 26.
The fear, the horror, the hell is this guy? Come after me, arrest me. Let's just get it over with. Tough guy. You know, I don't give a damn. But I care about my community. I care about this community. The hell are they doing? These guys need to grow up. They need to stop. And we need to push back. And I'm sorry to be so clear, but that kind of bloviating is exhausting. So, Tom, arrest me.
Confused. So I don't, any doubt that he's kind of off his rocker in terms of, remember, he spent a lot of time the last few months trying to, trek a little bit to the right and to the center. Now he's a full-blown insurrectionist. And it's spreading. They're in New York. They're in Las Vegas. They're planning this weekend a mass protest that, that as surely as night follows day is going to result at least in some violence and insurrection. And I think the president, in moving the National Guard in to protect L.A., he didn't invoke the Insurrection Act. He didn't need to. But I think he should move to invoke the Insurrection Act because this is just too dangerous. And on top of that, you've got this race baiting. on top of everything else, you've got this racial hatred being fomented by the left. Here's the Chicago mayor with some more viciousness.
They are absolutely terrified. And that's, look, I remember a few stand-ups ago when I talked about what terrorism looks like. This is it. There should be no question to what our country would look like had the Confederacy won. We're seeing it on full display.
So ICE removing foreign nationals, including criminals, like dangerous criminals who aren't supposed to be here, is like the Confederacy winning? Like slavery coming back? Is that what he's suggesting? And, you know, as I noted on a tweet, you know, this is a dangerous time for the country. Let's go to that tweet I posted, number 27. What did I say? I mean that metaphorically, folks. I meant that literally. Senator Alex Padilla, a senator from California, assaulted law enforcement in interrupting a speech or a presentation or press event by Secretary Noem. And what happened is he shows up, Noem's talking. By his own admission, he's, quote, standing in the back, and he doesn't like what Noem's saying, which is fine. He doesn't have to like it. But rather than be normal and sensible about it, he moves to the front of the room, demands to have his voice heard, ask a question, does not identify himself as a senator until law enforcement swarms him and moves him away because they were concerned about a security threat. And rather than cooperate with law enforcement, what does he do? He pushes and assaults. Let's go to the video. Number.
Guys, ready? And Bell. Sir, hands up. I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the Secretary because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your.
I also want to
Hands up.
How many of our ICE agents have been docked?
On the ground. Hands behind your back. Hands behind your back.
If you don't my hands, go ahead, put them behind my back.
All right. Cool. Hands with your hand. Lay flat. Lay flat.
Other hand, sir. Other hand.
There's no recording allowed out here. I did not know. There's no recording allowed out.
So under the January 6th precedents, right, his home's going to be raided. He's going to be in jail, right, awaiting trial. He's going to be tried and convicted and sentenced to 1 to 3 years in prison for restricting or impeding or resisting arrest and on law enforcement operations. Right? You think that's going to happen? I mean, if I were there, I don't know, I'd have him out in a way that his feet would never have touched the ground. I would have gotten him out so quick. Those law enforcement agents deserve meritorious medals, whatever the law enforcement equivalent would be for their jobs for exercising the patience they did with that violent man. We have a senator from California who was violent and attacking law enforcement. And he's out there making false statements about what he did. And I want to know why he's still walking around a free man. For that matter, why is Comey still walking around a free man? Why hasn't he been arrested and indicted for threatening to kill Trump? And here we have a senator on video assaulting law enforcement, and he's rather than being arrested, he's walking around, he's doing media interviews, and of course being promoted and lionized by his left-wing colleagues, his Democratic Party colleagues. And on top of that, you had the president of Mexico inciting more of this, telling her citizens, the left-wing president, the left-wing president, telling her citizens in Mexico to object to a modest increase in remittance taxes for illegal aliens and other foreign nationals, quote, sending money abroad, sending money home. Now, this is an issue which is interesting, and I raised it because we've been highlighting how outrageous it's been that you, dear citizen, has been subsidizing illegal aliens transferring their money back home. So the illegal aliens come here, engage in illegal activity, including working, and who knows what else in some contexts, in some situations, and they get their money sent back to Mexico. And one way to do that is through a U.S. Federal Reserve Bank program, so that's the federal government, Directo a Mexico. And Judicial Watch has been investigating this issue for years. And it's still in operation. They make it clear that you are able to access the program, even if you are an illegal alien. And by the way, there's no reason for it to exist in the sense that there are plenty of private entities that move money back and forth between countries. But, you know, the deep state, they want to help the illegal aliens, you know, erase our borders. And they want you to help pay for it through this Federal Reserve program. As we highlight in our Corruptions Chronicles blog, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum denounced the proposed remittance tax and calls for protests in this country, while conveniently failing to mention that this country, our government and you, subsidize money flowing outwards gained illegally by illegal aliens here in the United States. It's called Directo a Mexico. Migrants in the U.S. sent a historic $62.5 billion to families back home. And now they're going to be taxed, those remittances, at 3.5%. And the Mexican government is mobilizing Mexican citizens to, I guess, engage in more insurrection here in the United States. Trump wanted to have 5% remittance tax. The Republicans in the House and Senate are probably going to settle around 3.5, although someone said it should be much higher in light of the Mexican president's attack on our sovereignty. It was launched 20 years ago. Sadly, I remember when it was launched. I was here at Judicial Watch 20 years ago, believe it or not. Uses government resources to subsidize and help illegal aliens transfer cash to Mexico. We obtained the marketing material back in 2006, created for the program, and it highlighted how you could use the program regardless of status. And they said specifically, don't worry, if you're deported, you can still get your money. So I encourage you to go to our Corruption Chronicles blog. And by the way, if you're not reading our Corruption Chronicles blog, you're missing out a big part of what Judicial Watch does. We've got some great reporting in terms of exposing corruption here in Washington, D.C. The big media, I wouldn't say ignores, but sometimes downplays or doesn't really want to spend a lot of time on and isn't interested in, but Judicial Watch is, because we know big government and big secrecy and big corruption go hand in hand. So the next time you see stories about the economic contributions of illegal aliens to our economy, just remember, the federal government literally subsidizes them sending money back home. I mean, imagine you wanted to do a wire transfer to family members abroad. You're a citizen. I mean, do you think the federal government should give you money or help you do it, make it cheap for you to do it? Of course not. I mean, as a matter of small government principles, they shouldn't. But if you're here illegally, why on earth would we enable illegal activity? I mean, do you think that money is being transferred in a way to advance nothing but legal activity? Of course not. So the good news is, as President Trump admits, he waited in 2020. He waited, and he said this time, I'm not waiting any longer. I'm not going to wait for days and days of cities burning, of law enforcement being threatened, assaulted, federal buildings being burned before I send in the National Guard. He's not slowing down on the ICE deportations. The courts have been largely unable to, despite some truly outrageous rulings, to stop his mass deportations. There have been marginal restrictions on some of it, all of it outrageous, at least in my estimation. And hopefully Congress gets its act together and provides more resources for President Trump to deport more people, because as best I understand it, they're at capacity. Meaning, you know, they're burning through all the money they have, and they need more in order to deport the 10 million or so illegal aliens Biden let invade the country. That doesn't even deal with those that have been here previous to that. And I saw the other day that their goal is to get to over 3,000 a day, and they're almost there, which is just remarkable. You know, I complain about a lot of stuff here. I'm sure I can complain and will complain about something related to immigration enforcement. But it is a remarkable development that the president has gained control of the southern border and is engaged in the most powerful, direct, and substantial deportation effort in the history of the country. And it's something that protects our sovereignty, protects our lives, protects our safety, protects the safety and security, frankly, of those being deported and those who are prevented from being involved in human smuggling now. It is a humanitarian effort in addition to being a law enforcement effort. And if the Nobel Committee, the Nobel Peace Prize operation, wasn't so compromised and corrupted, Trump would get a Nobel Peace Prize for securing the border and his mass deportations. And I'm not saying that because I like Trump and I'm friendly with him. I'm dead serious. As a citizen and as president of Judicial Watch, he deserves a medal. Tom Homan deserves a medal. Stephen Miller deserves a medal. Kristen Noem deserves a medal. Because the violent left is doing what they do, engaged in violence to try to stop it. And our country's on the line. So I got some good news for you. The United States Justice Department filed a statement of interest in Judicial Watch's lawsuit in Oregon to clean up the voter rolls there. Now, as you may know, or maybe you don't, so I'll tell you, there's a federal law called the National Voter Registration Act. It requires states to take reasonable steps to clean up the rolls, to make the rolls available to individuals, to make sure that, and groups like Judicial Watch, so that they can ascertain whether the rolls are being maintained as the law requires. And Judicial Watch has used the law in a historic fashion to ensure voter rolls in the United States are cleaned the way they're supposed to pursuant to law. And that's resulted just in the last few years of 5 million names being cleaned from the rolls, thanks to Judicial Watch's legal efforts, lawsuits, 1.2 million names cleaned in Los Angeles County. It's almost 1 million now cleaned in New York City. Well over 100,000 cleaned down here in Washington, D.C. Rolls clean in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Kentucky, Colorado. Now, of course, we don't just sit on our laurels here, because there are probably, based on the more recent set of numbers, and it's going back a few years, so I could be off by a few million here and there, either low or too low or too high, right? The plus or minus. But it's at least 20 million names that need to be cleaned from the rolls nationally. We've cleaned 5 million of them. I say 20 million because it used to be 24 million, so I'm just taking away the numbers we cleaned. And to clean up more names, we've sued in Illinois, we've sued in California, because even though LA cleaned up the rolls, California generally hasn't in other jurisdictions in California, local jurisdictions, and Oregon. And in Oregon, we've got a big case or a big hearing next week in court. And just last week, the Trump Justice Department, I should be fair, the Trump Justice Department filed, as I said, a statement of interest. And it was narrowly tailored in the sense that they were just advocating for the proper application of the law, that this material be made available, voter registration lists be made available to Judicial Watch and other parties who are trying to ensure the rolls are being cleaned. But it's for the first time that the Justice Department in recent memory has done anything to ensure that the law is enforced when it comes to voter list maintenance. And Judicial Watch is happy that they've come in to support our cause here, however limited it may be, because we've been doing the heavy lifting alone. We haven't had the Justice Department helping us. During the Trump administration, there was one case where they jumped in Kentucky on our side, and that was really it. And Harmeet Dillon is the head of the Civil Rights Division, great activist lawyer for the conservative values that you and I share. And she's great on these civil rights issues. The left likes to pretend they're civil rights supporters. They're not. They don't like civil rights. They don't like your right to vote because they want to steal it all the time. And so civil rights and voting rights properly understood means that you would support Judicial Watch, because we're trying to preserve the vote, not steal votes. An election that's honestly run is the best way to vindicate voting rights. And having dirty voting rolls can mean dirty elections. And Harmeet Dillon was picked by President Trump to run this, the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department that handles cases like this. Oregon, by the way, has some of the dirtiest voting rolls in the nation, and that's saying a lot. I think we described it in our lawsuit here. Let me get to that page. Oregon's voting rolls contain large numbers of old inactive registrations, and 29 of Oregon's 36 counties removed few or no registrations as required by federal election law. And our lawsuit asserts that Oregon and 35 of its counties have overall registration rates exceeding 100%, and Oregon has the highest known inactive registration rates of any state in the nation. So let me break that down for you. If a county or locality or a state, usually it's by county in the states, have a voter registration rate of 100%, arguably even close to 100% or higher, that's a pretty good indication they're not cleaning up their rolls, because what it means is they have more people living there. No, excuse me. What it means is they have more people on the rolls than are living there. So if your registration rate is 105%, right, and you've got 100 people in your county, that means you've got 105 people on your rolls. That means there are 5 people who shouldn't be there and should be removed. And it doesn't mean you're going to catch them all as soon as they move away. No, but you've got to have a program in place to keep the rolls clean as time moves on. And what is the process? It's really simple. I think it should be more aggressive, but the law, this is what the law requires and, allows the states to do in order to comply with the federal cleanup statute. which is that if I don't, let's say Tom Fitton, let's use me as an example. I live here in Washington, D.C. If I don't vote in the next federal election, which is going to be next year, D.C. is supposed to send me a card. Hey, Tom, and I'm paraphrasing, we didn't see you voted this time. Are you there? If you are, let us know. Send this card back. So if I send the card back, they don't do anything. But if I don't send the card back, or if I don't vote for the next two federal elections, so not only in 2026, but then 2028 and 2030, then they can start removing my name. They can remove my name from the rolls. So what you're talking about is really kind of like 5-6 years potentially before your name is cleaned up. Now, is that perfect? No. But if you begin the process, the rolls get a lot more clean in a way that's appropriate. And the left doesn't want any of that done. And that's what Judicial Watch has been doing. So we had a settlement with Los Angeles. They began that process, and it resulted in 1.2 million names being cleaned up. Now, of course, when we go to sue, sometimes they clean up the rolls immediately because they've begun the process and they don't actually remove the names even though they can. And that's why when they say inactive voters are people who haven't voted and most of whom should have been removed under the process that I talked to you about. And they have the highest known inactive registration rate in the country there in Oregon. So we got a court hearing because the other side's trying to get our case thrown out. And by the way, the left intervenes in our cases all the time. I'm not sure who intervened in Oregon or if anyone did specifically, but it doesn't matter. All the time we're fighting the leftist Borg, as I call it, in these voting cases. And as I said, we're usually alone. At least here, the Justice Department sent a statement of interest. It's kind of like an amicus brief, defending in part our claims. In a Justice Department press release, Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division, Harmeet Dillon, said, "Accurate voter registration rolls are critical to ensure that elections in Oregon are conducted fairly, accurately, and without fraud. States have specific obligations under the list maintenance provisions of the National Voter Registration Act, and the Department of Justice will vigorously enforce these requirements." Yes. I mean, we're happy to do the work. I mean, that's what we do, right? But it's outrageous. We've been doing it alone, and the Justice Department has largely, even under Republican administrations, refused to enforce this law. It's the only reason the rolls get as dirty as they have been, because the states face no downside other than from Judicial Watch. I mean, we've cleaned up 5 million names from the rolls, a nonprofit. Imagine what we can do if the Justice Department gets its act together. And it looks like at least Ms. Dillon, Harmeet, is ready to begin doing the work. So I'm not going to complain. They could be doing more, the usual stuff. I'm happy they intervened as far as they did with this statement of interest. As they said, this case presents important questions regarding enforcement of the National Voter Registration Act. Congress has vested the Attorney General with authority to enforce the NVRA on behalf of the United States. And they take the same position as Judicial Watch does when it argues that by its plain terms, the NVRA, the National Voter Registration Act, identifies one entity, the state, that is required to carry out obligations for voter registration administration. And the Justice Department focuses on the state's obligation to make voter registration lists available to Judicial Watch and the public, as federal law requires. Now, we can't really enforce the law until we get access to the list. And what happens is sometimes you go into these states, like Oregon, and they say, oh, we don't have those lists. You have to go to each county and figure out how to get the list from them directly. No. Federal law doesn't say counties have the obligation to make this stuff available. I mean, I think they do. But ultimately, who's responsible? They say the states have the obligation to clean up the rolls, to make the rolls available to people like Judicial Watch. So it's a big hearing next week. It's, what day of the week is it on? Or what date, I should say. June 18th. What day is June 18th? Wednesday? Yeah, it's Wednesday. And so let's hope the hearing goes well. I don't know what we're going to hear. I think the other side is trying to get our motion dismissed or our lawsuit dismissed. It's the courts these days don't rule from the bench that much, but so I don't know if we'll know what happens even next week, but at least we'll have the argument. And thankfully, we've got the Trump administration on our side in at least one key respect. So, good news. The battles continue. So, we've been critical of I wouldn't say critical, we've been concerned about the FBI's new leadership, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. And our concern is that they don't seem to be taking the steps that, at least in my view, they should be taking to clean up corruption in the FBI. And I would just completely cut back the agency, do mass firings, not very incremental moves as they seemingly have been doing. I haven't seen any information to suggest that doing a broad-based criminal investigation of the lawfare against Trump, certainly their position on transparency, hasn't changed in practice as it relates to Judicial Watch and the Freedom of Information Act. I mean, we just sued last week, we sued several months ago for the Epstein files at this point. The government's answer was due last week, and we asked the FBI and DOJ, give us Epstein files, and plus give us records about your handling of the Epstein files from Kash and Pam Bondi, the Attorney General. And the response has been to not give us one document yet. And they cited, I think, extraordinary circumstances or exceptional circumstances as justification for not giving us material yet. And they haven't told us or the court when they're going to turn over the Epstein files. And that's just one example of lack of transparency under law by the FBI. And I'm sorry, you don't need, quote, time to comply with the law. We're not asking them to build, I do think they should be pursuing cases. This isn't an issue about whether they have time to build a case. No, this is an issue about whether they're going to actually follow the FOIA law every day, in every way. And my colleague, Micah Morrison, who writes the investigative bulletin over at Judicial Watch, again, another reason to go to our website, had a really excellent piece, and it's called FBI's Patel and Bongino Hostages of the Deep State. And it's a nice piece. You can tell, I shouldn't say nice piece, it's a fair piece to them. And we note in the beginning here, Kash and Dan have been stalwart allies of the conservative movement and good friends of Judicial Watch for many years. Judicial Watch applauded their appointments as director and deputy director of the FBI, and expectations were high. And so Micah quoted, our support of him, of at least Kash's appointment there. But later in the piece, Micah notes, veteran Washington reformers like Fitton, me, understand that Patel's time for true change is limited. The deep state, the forces of inertia, and the political calendar are all working against him. These days, as well, conservative insiders are alarmed by mounting signs that Patel and Bongino have been taken hostage by the deep state, that they've been taken hostage by the deep state consensus and are failing to bring meaningful changes to the FBI. And so, we just go through jot and tittle what the FBI has and hasn't been doing in terms of accountability and such. And it's not to say they haven't been doing some good things. There's obviously some good things they're going to be doing. I mean, Dan and Cash are generally good guys. There's no doubt about it. But on these big picture issues, they're a little bit behind, to put it charitably. As we say at the end of the piece, doubtless, Bondi, Patel, and Bongino have their hands full managing the day-to-day affairs of their giant bureaucracies. Conservatives still wish them well. But time is running out, and the president who promised to, quote, demolish the deep state is watching from the White House. So my guess is Trump is wondering too, or at least I would be if I were him. They will not be forgiven for bungling an historic opportunity. That's pretty strong stuff, but it's true. Everything's riding on it. I mean, they tried to destroy, these agencies tried to destroy our republic. And nothing's been done, as best I can tell, that effectively holds them accountable for that. And I was talking about this issue with our friend Steve Bannon on the War Room the other day. Let's go to that videotape. Well, on the foreign policy issues you raise, I'm more hawkish than you are. But I think we would both agree that the deep state's approach to Ukraine, Russia, and Iran is not to solve any problems, it's to manage problems, right? And, Biden didn't want Russia to win, but they also didn't want Russia to lose, which to me is a wild abuse of the citizens caught up in a war like that. And same thing with Iran. Either we want them to have nukes or we don't. Let's not manage their nuclear program. We're not in a position to do so. And that's what the deep state specializes in, creating problems that have to be managed rather than solved. And I know that's not Trump's general approach. Now, on these issues related, though, to the agencies themselves, I'm not quite sure why we still have a CIA, given their failures, their documented record of failures over the decades. There's not a darn thing the CIA does that the military agencies can't do, the intelligence agencies can't and shouldn't, and certainly the State Department can take up a lot of the slack as well. And my colleague Micah Morrison had a really strong analysis of the situation that Cash and Don are in, that Dan are in the FBI. Are they? The title was, "Are they hostages of the deep state?" And I think there's a strong argument that they're hostages of the deep state consensus. And on top of that, as Micah points out in the piece, you've got the inertia of just bureaucracies. You've got the political calendar. And in many ways, in my view, they're distracted from their core responsibility, I think, which is to dismantle the FBI and protect the republic. I mean, the left tried to kill President Trump last year. They tried to throw him in jail. They've been fomenting an insurrection. We had right now a political leader of the Democratic Party, a senator from California, assault law enforcement as he was disrupting a press briefing. They're putting the country on the precipice. And I would submit this insurrection, it's the other side of the coin to the lawfare against Trump. And you give these folks an inch, they will take a mile. And it's about protecting the republic in the end. And the FBI is an instrumentality of those who would destroy the republic. And Dan and Cash may be running it for now, but organizationally and institutionally, I don't think they're redeemable. And in the least, hard to argue with me, isn't it? I mean, I actually watch it strangely in a disinterested way. Oh, I agree with me. I often say, because are my comments making sense to me as I think about them even later? They are. It's concerning. I mean, in the least, we're not even getting responses properly to our FOIA requests. They're still stonewalling and stalling. But we have a case. I really don't remember the detail, and because I haven't done the prep on it for a discussion with you, but I'm going to tell you about it anyway. So, we're essentially we're asking the FBI. We sued for their FOIA. We sued under FOIA for their censorship records with Twitter and social media. And there's key information Cash and Dan's FBI are withholding from us, and we're going to have to go to court next week and fight about. They don't want to talk about the Biden administration's internal deliberations related to the censorship of Americans. And no, it's not because they're building a case. It's because the agency takes the position we don't have a right to see it because, if we release the records about our internal discussions, that might chill further deliberations, future discussions. We want people to be open and honest. That's the sort of crap we have to put up with. And I'm frankly tired of it. I thought we were going to have a change in pace, a change in approach. Evidently not. So I want the FBI to arrest bad guys. I want the FBI to do the job they're being paid to do. But do I trust the FBI institutionally? I do not. Do I think it should remain? I do not. Heck, they can't give us one Epstein document. Not one. It's been months. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. I mean, I could go through dozens of requests. Literally, dozens of lawsuits against the Justice Department and the FBI, which have not changed one bit since the Attorney General and Cash took over. I tell you, if Trump knew the scope of it, he'd go ballistic. So we're just going to keep on doing what we can do, right? File our FOIA requests, file our FOIA lawsuits. Before I forget, we were in court just the other day. I've been telling you about this Gaza cover-up out of the State Department and the USAID, where they've been hiding the recipients of cash from USAID in Gaza. And the only legitimate reason they've said, or legal reason, I wouldn't say legitimate, is because the people who get the money will be put in danger. By who? The Israelis because they're terrorists? Obviously, that's the reason they don't want to turn it over. And rather than turn over the information, this is money the Biden gang gave to Gaza. They were literally in court the other day telling a court that Judicial Watch waived its rights to get access to the specific names who got the money from the kind of the overarching grant recipient. This is what happened. They said, well, you can't find out who the big grant recipient is, citing these fake reasons. And then they said, oh, okay, you can find out. And it's Catholic Relief Services. They gave $7 million. But Catholic Relief Services gave the money then to, I think, 4 groups in Gaza. They're withholding that information from us. And they convinced the court that we had waived our right to that information. The court agreed, so now we're going to have to file another FOIA and another federal FOIA lawsuit to get access to who the Biden people were giving USAID. Who the Biden people were giving money to in Gaza via USAID. It was a Biden cover-up from the beginning, being enabled and furthered by this Justice Department. And it happened last week. No, it happened this week. Excuse me. It was Wednesday. I was thinking it was last Friday. It was Wednesday. I mean, it was our 5th, I think our 5th or 4th. Maybe it was our 5th, because I wasn't able to make this hearing as client. I think this was our 5th federal court hearing. And the judge is like, summary judgment granted. Judicial Watch, go back to the drawing board. I'm going to buy the Trump Justice Department. That's what Bondi is doing when she does this. She's attaching this cover-up to Trump, which is outrageous, because I know Trump well enough to know that the last thing he'd do is want to keep this material from the American people. There's no more excuses. I tell you, I am so outraged about that. Because it's a simple issue, just a few names. We all know what the USAID was doing in Gaza. We all know about how these transnational groups were providing succor for the terrorists there. And we've been getting the runaround from the State Department and the Justice Department on the simplest FOIA you can imagine. And they were playing a shell game with us. And shell game with the court. It's as bad as anything, we had to put up with in the Biden administration or the Obama administration. It's as bad. Yeah, it's as bad. I mean, there are things, one or two things we've gotten that we might not have gotten from Joe or Barack. Not happy to report it to you, but I wish I could tell you. Great news. The Biden cover-up on Gaza cash through USAID to Lord knows who has been ended thanks to the Trump Justice Department and Marco Rubio's State Department. They've given us the information. No, instead, they went to a court and told us, throw Judicial Watch out of court and make them come back and ask again so we can tell them no again. Really terrible. But as you know, we're relentless, so we just keep on suing for information no matter what it is. And we've got a great new lawsuit against the Pentagon, the Defense Department, for documents about the COVID. What had happened was it looked like members of the military were infected with COVID months before the public knew about COVID, after they attended World Military Games in Wuhan. We sued the U.S. Department of Defense for all records regarding U.S. military personnel possibly contracting COVID-19 in October of 2019 at the World Military Games in Wuhan, China. The lawsuit cites a December 22 report issued by the Pentagon, well, I shouldn't say issued, covered up, by the Pentagon titled Report to the Committees on Armed Services of the Senate and House of Representatives 2019 World Military Games, which states that 7 service members who attended the Games exhibited COVID-19-like signs and or symptoms during the time surrounding their attendance at the Games. So it looks like members of our military got COVID months beforehand. And rather than kind of disclose something substantial about the emergence of COVID, it was covered up, by and large, by the Biden administration. The report was not made public until April of this year, so just 3 months ago. So this report's been floating around since December of 2022, and it's been covered up since April, until April. And it was only because former Representative Mike Gallagher, who's was a China hawk and has exposed so much about China in the work he did in Congress. I encourage you to go look up his work there. And he asked the Defense Department for a full investigation. And this is another part of the scandal. Two committees in the Senate and the House had access to this information. They didn't share it with the American people. Which brings me to another issue. When they say we're going to give documents to Congress, that's no assurance that you're going to see them. Because Congress is under no obligation to release information they get. Sometimes they're not able to because it's classified for obvious reasons. But non-classified information, or information they have the discretion to release, which may include classified information, I guess that might be a legal fight, is often kept secret by Congress. And in this case, were sitting on this information for years. In a 2021 documentary, What Really Happened in Wuhan, Sky News Australia reported a month after the evidence emerged that the virus leaked from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the city of Wuhan hosted the military games, which had more than 9,000 athletes around the world in attendance. The impact of the world's military games on the COVID-19 pandemic was an article published by the National Institutes of Health, our people, in January of 2021. And they cited a study that whole military games program or event was a key factor in the spread of the COVID-19 disease. Certainly, you got to wonder, so this is what the scenario would be if it was a actual leak from a lab and it was a purposeful leak. Well, what better way to spread it than to have it spread at an international event attended by members of the military from all over the world? And don't get me started as to why the U.S. was participating in games in China, but that's another matter. So this is a big deal. And as I say in the press release, I wasn't in a good mood when I wrote this quote. Let's cut to the chase. The Pentagon should release each and every document about military personnel possibly being infected by COVID in Wuhan, China, months before the public learned of the disease. The time for FOIA games is over. We're done. I think the heads of the agencies, the key officials, they need to take transparency seriously on these issues. Enough with the games, enough with the excuses. It looks like our military was infected by COVID months before the public knew about it. They covered it up for years. Let's get the details ASAP. Not 3 years from now, not a year from now, yesterday. And of course, we've got a great book on this, in part, Rights and Freedoms Under Attack, my new book. Do we have the graphic for that? Oh, Rights and Freedoms in Peril. I was conflating the titles of our various books. Rights and Freedoms in Peril. An investigative report on the left's attack on America. The left's attack on America included the suppression of the truth about COVID. And Judicial Watch has been second to none in exposing virtually everything we know about COVID and the vaccines. I tell you, the book is going to shake you in terms of the information that's there, the outrageous nature of it, and the implications from COVID to censorship to the lawfare against Trump, etc. And so Relentless Judicial Watch is following up on our massive finds on the cover-up related to the Wuhan lab, the gain-of-function fraud by Fauci, the vaccine lies, and now we're fighting over the Wuhan cover-up as well. So I think this has been a pretty good weekly update, right? And it should give you a pretty good overview of just how important Judicial Watch's work is and essential we are to our constitutional republic. And I encourage you to support our good work. Go to our website at judicialwatch.org, make a donation. If you've made a donation, you're already a current supporter, thank you. And of course, you know, we still got bills to pay, so keep on keeping on in terms of your support for Judicial Watch. Because our work, in my view, is essential to the future of our nation. I think our republic is on the precipice, as I said, and I'm hoping groups like Judicial Watch and our work has us as some small part of keeping us on the right side so we don't topple over. So with that, I wish you the best. Have a wonderful Father's Day, those of you who are fathers. And of course, wish your fathers happy Father's Day if you're not a father, or the fathers in your lives as well. And I'll see you here next time on the Judicial Watch Weekly Update. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.